Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Texan News Scoop, your weekend review of this week's top stories from the campus, region, and beyond. From the Tarleton State University in Stephenville, Texas, today is June 25th, 2015, and I'm Katy Tonkin. This week's stories are: Tarleton gives light to the parking situation, a Tarleton professor speaks about the Confederate flag issue, a police officer was killed in line of duty, an inmate in Georgia jail was killed, a jewelry heist occurred in Britain. In campus news, according to President Dominic DeTavio, changes to Tarleton's parking are in effect. They first plan to add gates to 5 of the largest faculty and staff parking lot, and ungated lots will have an increase in parking enforcement. The gates will restrict access to the lots, ensuring those who are assigned to park there will find easy and ample parking. After hours, the gates will go up, allowing visitors and students improved access to events and activities, said DeTavio in an email to faculty. Secondly, they will add more than 1,000 parking spaces this summer for residential and commuting students. In addition, all new lots will be paved and lightened. Also, small parking projects are anticipated on the 1400 block of Shirley Street, at the intersection with North Lillian, at the intersection of West Jones and Kane Streets, and on the site of the 1915 and 1905 West Tarleton Street. And now for this week's scoop. We have an exclusive interview with Dr. Michael Landis regarding the Confederate flag issue. Hi, Dr. Landis. Welcome to the show. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling well. How about yourself?
I'm good. So we just brought you in to talk about the Confederate flag issue that's going around lately. So what kind of prompted this social uproar?
Well, clearly you've had two things that have happened very recently. You've had a Supreme Court decision in favor of the state of Texas banning or preventing the Sons of Confederate veterans from getting a Confederate flag on the license plate. So there's an important legal decision that happened recently. And then you had the shooting in Charleston, where the shooter was clearly a young man who had pictures of himself with the Confederate flag, and it revealed for the nation in a very dramatic fashion that the flag represents more than many people said it does, right? Because most people had said, most people who fly the Confederate flag have been saying for generations that it represents heritage and Southern pride and whatnot. But the shooting in Charleston blew the lid off that. And now there's a great discussion that's been a long time coming. Historians are giddy, the fact that everyone's talking about history in the Civil War right now. So I think those two things have created kind of a perfect storm for some change of opinion.
So is it something that you're discussing in your classes right now?
I'm glad to say that we discuss the Confederate flag in all my classes every semester. So if that's standard, every American history professor deals with that. And so we're the ones who are happy that people are now interested in this,
right.
But that's the standard fare, I've been interviewed a couple times recently by local news media, and they're flabbergasted by what my students would tell you is common sense, right? That this is stuff that we cover in class, what the flag means, what the causes of the Civil War, slavery. All my classes deal with that in some way. And I teach specialty classes on the Civil War and upper level classes on slavery. So this is something that we handle every semester in my classes. It's just the rest of the country who seems to be not caught up yet.
So in that case, can you give us a little bit of a brief history lesson and tell us what the Confederate flag actually means?
Sure. First of all, it's dangerous to ask history professors to give history lessons because we'll just go on for about 2.5 hours at least. Right, to put it as short as possible, the Confederate flag represents an attempt by Southern slave owners to create a new independent slave-owning republic separate from the United States. And that republic would be based on racial inequality and class inequality. So you'd have rule by a planter elite, which is very wealthy, powerful slave owners, and their power based on black slavery. And every Southern state that seceded made this absolutely clear that that was their objective. Every state, when they seceded, in total 11, issued a declaration of secession. And in those declarations, they said again and again and again, this is in order to found a new country to protect and spread slavery. Even one of the documents that we discuss in my class every semester, my survey classes, is a speech by the vice president of the Confederacy, a man by the name of Alexander Stephens. And he says very clearly, look, the cornerstone of this country is black slavery. That's what we're doing here. This is the whole basis of it, right? That the United States, with its ideas about equality and freedom and whatnot, those are wrong. We're going to form a new country based on the opposite, inequality and slavery. So that's that's the flag in context, and like I said, you can go to every single state secession doctrine. And Confederates who launched secession, launched the war, had big plans. They thought that the Confederacy was going to be the greatest nation that the world had ever seen, and they had plans to conquer the Western Hemisphere and spread slavery everywhere. I mean, these people were rather shocked that it didn't last more than about 4 years, that the whole thing collapsed. But that's what the flag represents, right? A country, an independent country based on slave labor and with designs to spread slavery as quickly and as broadly as possible.
Right, okay. So there's a tradition that goes on here in Stephenville where they put up Confederate flags, you know, in the West Cemetery every spring. You know, family members do it to honor their loved ones. Do you think that this practice will end with this new issue? Or not a new issue, but...
That's good. Yeah, no, it's not. It's only a new issue for people who don't know what they're doing. The issue of the Confederate flags in the cemetery is a good one, and I don't think it's going to go quietly. Now, I don't live in Stephenville, and I'm rather new to North Texas, but I'm willing to guess that the people who perform that action of putting the flags in there are very serious about that activity, and they're not going to stop it just because something that happened in South Carolina or there's complaining about the flags. But that doesn't mean it can't be changed. And so I think it would be a very good idea if students here at Tarleton State University in particular spearheaded that action, right? And perhaps press the city to curtail that activity. There's a student group here on campus that just formed last year called Texans Against Slavery. And they have a two-prong objective. One of their goals is to raise awareness of current slavery in the world today, right? You know, like Apple products and all kinds of stuff that we use every day are made largely by unfree labor. So that's one goal of that organization. But a second goal is also to combat myths about slavery in American history, something, you know, like people misunderstanding the Confederate flag. So I think fighting the Confederate flag placement in the cemetery, I think would be a great activity for that organization. Perhaps we can get something going in the fall semester into the spring, where we can bring students together, have some kind of protest, maybe work with some other groups, other schools, and perhaps pressure the county or the city, whoever actually runs the cemetery, to at least re-examine, at least open the discussion up, right? Because right now there's no discussion. And it's a very hot issue because, like I said, a lot of people think of the flag in terms of this vague thing called heritage rather than the actual meaning, the historical context. So I think that's something that it's not going to happen on its own, to answer your question, but I think it can happen, and I think it should happen, and that we can do it. And it can start here with Tarleton. So anyone who's watching the video, think about joining Texas Against Slavery. If you let me pitch my group there.
Awesome. And so that means you're the faculty advisor for this group?
Right. It actually, I'm pleased and proud to say that the group came out of a course I taught last year on slavery in the American South. And it started as an extra credit project, and they got very excited about it, and they actually brought in a guest speaker last year and were able to raise some money, and they're going to hit the ground running when the new semester starts, organize activities on campus as well as possibly a protest movement against those flags over there in the cemetery. But we'll see. It's a student-run organization, so I encourage and I help where I can, but it's their activity, so they have to do it themselves.
Well, I think that's all the questions I have for you today.
Great.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
I just want to say thank you for having me here, and feel free to invite me back anytime you have any kind of questions about anything at all.
Of course. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
In regional news, according to the Associated Press, a Hutto police officer, Sergeant Christopher Kelly, was killed by a police vehicle at a traffic stop. The suspect has been charged with assault with a deadly weapon after the police officer was killed. They have booked 26-year-old Colby Ray Williamson without bond. A statement from the Texas Department of Public Safety says the incident happened about 10 a.m. Wednesday after officers chased Williamson on foot. Kelly caught up to him and a struggle ensued. Williamson gained control of a Hutto Police Department vehicle and ran over Kelly before speeding away. In national news, according to the Associated Press, Matthew Ajibade was found dead strapped to a chair in county jail in Savannah, Georgia, January 1st. A grand jury indicted 2 former jail employees and a health and care worker in the college student deaths on Wednesday. This is yet another fatal incident that occurred between law enforcement and black men. former jail workers Maxine Evans and Jason Kenny, and contract healthcare worker Gregory Brown are charged with involuntary manslaughter. Kenny is also charged with aggravated assault and cruelty to an inmate. Evans and Brown are charged with public record fraud, and Brown faces an additional charge of making a false statement. Abajade was arrested on domestic violence charges after getting into a fight with his girlfriend. In international news, according to the Associated Press, British police released a video showing a violent burglary on a jewelry store in Altrincham. The burglary occurred on June 10th and was done by 4 men who used a battering ram to break through the security doors. They smashed glass cabinets and stole 13 watches worth more than £186,000, $293,000 US dollars. In total, police have yet to make any arrest. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode of the Texan News Scoop, a product of the Texan News Service from the Tarleton State University campus in Stephenville, Texas. Today's show was produced by Justin Pack and Keanu Perez, and I'm Katy Tonkin. Have a great week.